Hi everyone, welcome into this week's My Weekly CBS Fix. I hope you had a wonderful week. I hope you have a wonderful upcoming Shabbos. In this week's Parshas Ki Saitzai, the Torah tells us first about the laws of the Yifas Toar, then the laws of a man who has two wives, one that whom he loves, one who he doesn't love as much, and then the law of the Ben Sorer Murr. So the first law is the law of the Yifas Toar. So if the Jewish men went out to war, if it happened to be that a Jewish man saw a non-Jewish woman, even if she was a married woman, it was permitted for him to take her, to be intimate with her, to possibly even marry her. Now, right after that is the law of what happens if a person has two wives, the Ahuva and the Snua, the beloved one, the non-beloved one. And then right after that is like we said, the law of the wayward son, what happens to him and the subsequent consequences that happens to the son. Rashi tells us that the reason why these three are together is because if a person initially starts off on the path of taking this woman who's normally not permitted, right, to him, ultimately that's eventually going to cause marital problems. He's going to have a wife who he loves, a wife who he doesn't love, and then ultimately the product of such a union is ultimately this Ben Sorer or Moreh, this wayward son who eventually has to be put to death. And the question that we have to ask is, why do all these negative things seem to happen if the Torah actually permits the man, the Jewish man in the army, to take this woman? So if it's permitted, then it's permitted. Why should something negative come because of this? So we have to understand a very, very important concept the Torah is trying to teach us over here, that just because something is permitted as a dispensation, as there's no other choice but to permit it, does not mean that something good is going to come out of it. We have to judge every single thing that we do, that even if it may be permitted, it's not necessarily in our best interest. And the Torah is actually teaching us that it's probably going to have a negative effect. And the real reason is, even though it may be permitted, but you're really not doing it for altruistic purposes, you're not really doing it to serve Hashem, you're doing it to serve yourself. Now, the Torah permits it because otherwise, if the Torah didn't permit it, the person would do the sin anyway, which, by the way, proves that if the Torah normally does not permit something, that means you can actually withstand the test. Here, the Torah is actually telling you that you would not be able to withstand the test, and therefore the Torah had to permit it. So even though it was permitted, nevertheless, we have to know that not everything that is permitted will have good results. For example, a lot of times people will try to reach out and touch a non-affiliated Jewish person and invite them to their home for Shabbos and allow many things along the way to do whatever they can to bring that person there. There might be permitted to bring that person to the home, even though that person may drive a car or that person may use the phone or many other things, and it may be permitted to do so. But we have to know that that person that does those things can possibly cause that person to actually go further away from Torah. And so therefore, even though something may be permitted, we always have to use proper judgment. Why are we really doing this? We're really doing it for Hashem's sake? Are we doing it for our sake? If it's something not good, it won't have good results. One other idea I want to share with you, the Ben Sorer Umoreh, the wayward son, the Torah actually says the word Moreh, Sorer Umoreh. He turns away and he rebels. Moreh actually, though, also means to teach, a teacher. And when the Torah usually writes the word Moreh, it would spell it Mem Vav Reish He. Usually, that is the correct way to spell it. Here, the Torah spells it without the Vav, without the second letter, without the Vav letter. It's still spelled Moreh, but it's not spelled in full. It's spelled deficient, which is telling us that something is deficient. He did not have the right Moreh. He did not have the right teacher. He did not have the right upbringing. He did not have the right chinuch, the right education. And if somebody is not going to give their children the correct education or the correct teachers, then God forbid, that could be the deterrent for a child to have a successful life. So make sure you're doing the best for your child, and the best for your child is sometimes to rebuke them and sometimes as well to certainly find them the best education that they can. Don't be blind to your own child. Get them the best education. Have a great Shabbos. Thank you for listening.